Camera chooser. Stop recording. Button. Voiceover off.
Howdy, folks. Happy New Year. To start things off, we're back in the luxury suite of the Wettlaufer dining room. The acoustics are rather echoey. Hopefully that's not an issue. I wouldn't know because I only hear them from here. But it does seem extra echoey, which is kind of fun to say. Anyway, hopefully everyone had a good Christmas, a Happy New Year, and I guess I should say Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Welcome to January. Somehow we're already, in January, and here we are. And we're not the only ones that are here, because also, in my hand, and now on my table, is the next edition of our book club thing of our Here's Hank, because that's all we have, How to Hug an Elephant. I'm going to go on a limb and say, maybe you don't. Anyway, let's see how Hank goes about it. As per usual, we've got the author is Henry Winkler and Lynn Oliver, illustrated by the one and only Scott Garrett. And without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Hopefully my fingers and voice box hold up for the hour and change. It looks like we have, the phone. We have approximately exactly 124 pages. And there's a letter in front of them, so there might be two in some cases. How exciting. Alright, yes, 124 pages by the looks of it. Let's see if I can make it through. And more importantly, let's see if you can make it through. Here's Hank, How to Hug an Elephant. Chapter 1. We're off to the zoo, Miss Flowers said as the doors of the yellow school bus closed. Everyone cheered. Our whole class had been looking forward to this field trip all week. My best friends, Frankie and Ashley, were sitting in the seat in front of me. I had the bad luck of having gotten Nick McKelty as my partner. That meant I had to sit next to him on the bus. And that meant I had very little seat. Nick the Tick's thick body took up most of it. I don't mean to be gross, but my right butt cheek was riding in the air. What do you most want to see at the zoo? Miss Flowers asked as she walked up and down the aisle, collecting our lunches. One of the parents, Miss Shimazato, held the big yellow container where our lunches would be kept until it was time to eat them. A giant squid, said Luke Whitman, handing her his brown bag with a salami grease mark covering the bottom. I guess we know what he's having. We're going to the zoo, Luke, not the aquarium, Miss Flowers answered. Her voice sounded like she was holding her nose, even though she wasn't. That happens a lot around Luke. What about you, Hank? I want to see a giraffe. Tongue, I said. I hear they're purple and covered in hair. So are you, Zipper Fang, Nick said. He threw his arms up in the air and burst out laughing at his usual not funny joke. That one movement put my nose right next to his armpit, where it was not any place any nose wanted to be. It smelled like rotten eggs on toast. Giraffe tongues are dark in color to protect them from getting sunburnt, Ms. Flowers said. Their tongues are out a lot when they're picking leaves off trees. That set off a lot of conversation about weird but true animal facts. It seems like everyone on the bus knew one. It was a fun way to spend the bus ride. Spiders have 8 legs and 48 knees, Katie Sperling said. Kangaroos can't walk backward, Frankie chimed in. Tigers have striped skin, not just striped fur, Ryan Shimanzato said. His mom smiled proudly, as if she had said it herself. Elephants are the only animals that can't jump, Ashley said. That's because they can weigh up to 15,000 pounds. Hard to get that off the ground. I love them anyway, I said to Ashley. I've watched lots of shows about them on television. I hope we get to see one today. Well, Hank, I think you're going to get your wish, Miss Flowers said. There is an elephant enclosure at the zoo. Can we go there first? I begged. We have a tour guide who has the whole morning planned for us. Miss Flowers said, it's important that we all stay together. Remember our most important rule, no wandering away. And that goes especially for you, Hank. She didn't even have to say why. I knew what she meant. I get lost a lot. Maybe it's because I still can't tell my left from my right. Last week, Miss Flowers gave me the attendance sheet to take to the office. She said to walk to the end of the hall and turn right. Then go to the water fountain and turn left. I thought I followed her directions perfectly. That is, until I pulled the door open and walked right into the girls' bathroom. Lucky for me, it was empty. The other is... The zoo is very large, Miss Flowers explained as we pulled into the parking lot. You are each responsible to always know where your partner is. After we entered the zoo, we met our tour guide, Gina, who told us our first stop was Gorilla World. While she was telling us all about what we were going to see, I noticed Nick wander away. He was headed for a cart that sold toy zoo animals. Since he was my partner, it was my responsibility to tell him to stay with the group. His back was to me, so he couldn't see. His back was to me, so I couldn't see what he was doing. I took over. Fingers are starting to conk out. I snuck over to him and whispered in his ear, so Miss Flowers couldn't hear. You're not supposed to be here, I said. Suddenly, he wheeled around and flashed what looked like a rat in front of my face. Before I could do anything, he dropped it down the front of my shirt. It felt cold and sticky. Ah! I screamed. Before I could stop myself, I pulled my shirt out of my pants and the sticky thing fell out the bottom of my shirt to the ground. I looked down and saw it was a rubber rat. I turned around to tell McKelty how annoying that was, but he had already snuck back to the group. So I stood there alone with everyone in the class laughing at me. Everyone, that is, but Miss Flowers. She did not look happy. Hank, she said, what was the last thing I said to you on the bus? No wandering away. But Miss Flowers, I was just trying to be responsible. Well, you didn't succeed, Hank. Now, please apologize to Gina for interrupting her introduction to Gorilla World. I apologized, but it wasn't fair. It was McKelty who had wandered away. I had only gone after him to help. We started down the path that led to the gorillas. I'm going to have a fun day with you, Zipper Butt, McKelty said. You're my favorite kind of partner. You make the animals in this zoo seem smart. I looked at Frankie and Ashley, who were at the front of the line, asking Gina lots of questions. They seemed really happy. Then I looked at Nick McKelty next to me. who snickered just before he tripped me. Nice guy. "Watch your step," the big creep said. Only one thought was running through my mind. Why did I get stuck with this guy? Chapter 2. Gorilla World was really cool. We walked along a path next to the rainforest the zoo had built to house about 20 gorillas. When we stopped, Gina told us all about them. It was hard to listen to what she was saying because I was watching to see the gorillas swing from tree to tree. They just sat on the ground picking bugs out of one another's hair. I raised my hand. "When do they go on to swing from branches?" I asked Gina. "As soon as you show them how, Zipperhead," McKelty mumbled. "Actually, that's an excellent question," Gina said. I smiled inside myself. "Take that, McKelty." "Gorillas spend most of their time on the ground," Gina explained. "They climb trees only to find fruit." "I'd climb a tree for a peach," I said. "But definitely not for a plum. They're so soft, they make my lips pucker." Oh, they're not soft, they're sour. Finger malfunction. Everyone in the class laughed, including Miss Flowers and Ms. Shemanzato, I should say. We stayed in Gorilla World for half an hour, but it seemed like a month to me. Even though gorillas are very interesting, I couldn't wait to get to the elephants. Besides, there's only so long you can watch large apes pick bugs off one another without starting to itch yourself. Our next stop was the snack bar. Ms. Flowers ordered 21 frozen lemonades with the money our parents had sent. "Frozen lemonades are stupid," Nick complained. "They wrinkle your tongue." "Then you don't have to get one," Ms. Shemanzato said. "Good. I'll have a double order of cheese garlic fries instead." That's just what McKelty needs. As if his breath didn't smell bad enough already. "I'm sorry, Nick," Ms. Flowers said. "We're all getting the same thing. It's frozen lemonade or nothing." "Fine. Well, these guys are freezing their tongues off. I'm going to the bathroom." "That's odd," Miss Flowers said. "I don't think I heard you ask permission to go there." "I did," he lied. "I just did it silently." "All right, Nick. You have permission to go to the restroom, but your partner has to go with you. And don't be long." Boy, did I feel sorry for his partner. Then I realized it was me. "Wait a minute. Does that mean I don't get frozen lemonade?" I asked. "Of course you will, Hank," Miss Flowers answered. "We'll have yours waiting when you get back." Gina gave us directions to the bathroom. It wasn't far away, but there were several left and right turns we had to make. This was the one and only time I was ever happy to be with Nick, the Tick. He may be a jerk, but he's a jerk who's better at directions than I am. On the way into the bathroom, we passed a dad carrying a baby in a backpack. That little kid was lucky. He could just ride around on his dad's back and pee in his diaper anytime he wanted. I stopped to give him a high five, but McKelty yanked me away. "Babies are gross," he snarled at me. "Besides, I want to get back to the frozen lemonade. I'm so thirsty I might drink yours too. When the baby heard McKelty's grumpy voice, he burst out crying. That's the right call, little guy, I whispered to him. Inside the bathroom wasn't crowded. In fact, we were the only ones in there. As usual, McKelty thought he was the boss of me. I'll take this stall, he said. You go to the one on the end. Why? Because I need to be alone and don't even ask why. That was fine with me. Any plan that puts space between me and McKelty is a good plan. When I came out of the stall, I washed my hands and waited for him at the sink. I waited and waited. At last I called out, "Hey, McKelty! You stay in there any longer and you're going to have to pay your rent." There was no answer. I walked over to the stall, bent down, and looked to see if I could see his shoes. There was nothing there. With one finger, I pushed open the door. Not only was it unlocked, the stall was empty. Nick the Tick had struck again. He ditched me! I started to panic a little, but then I told myself that I could handle this. I would find my way back all by myself. I just needed to give the situation the old Hank Zipser attitude. I took a deep breath and walked out of the bathroom. I looked in both directions. I had absolutely no idea where I was. Chapter 3. Stay calm, Hank. Stay calm, Hankster, I said to myself. I felt the panic start in my toes and shoot out the top of my head. My neck felt like it was on fire. I blinked hard and looked around. I asked myself, Hank, does anything look familiar? And I can honestly say the answer was no. Where was my head when I was walking to the bathroom? I guess it had taken a trip to Saturn, which is my favorite planet because of the rings. But Saturn was sure not helping me now. And then I saw a big map of the zoo posted in a glass case. Problem solved. I would just check the map, except for the small problem that I can't read maps, but I wasn't going to let that little detail get me down. I walked confidently over to the map and studied it carefully. There were blue trails, green trails, yellow ones, and red ones. All I had to do was find the one with a snack bar on it with my finger. I traced each trail to the end, and then panic grabbed me by the neck again when I realized that each one of the trails had a snack bar on it. I ask you why do there have to be so many snack bars at one zoo? How many snacks does one person need? I stood there and took a deep breath. My mom always says that taking deep breaths will let your brain work harder. Sure enough, a great thought jumped into my mind. Maybe I can't read a map, and maybe I don't know left from right, but I can speak English, and so could everybody else in the zoo. All I had to do was find an adult and ask them to take me to the snack bar closest to the gorillas. That was one great idea, if I do say so myself, and actually reached my hand out over my shoulder and patted myself on the back. I looked around for a friendly face and decided to ask a friendly looking couple who both had cameras around their necks. "Excuse me," I said, using my best manners. "Do you think you could show me the way to the gorillas?" They looked at each other and shrugged. "Je ne parle pas d'anglais," said the man. "Huh?" I said. He repeated something that sounded even more foreign. How could it be? Of all the visitors to the zoo, I picked the two who don't speak a word of English. Gracias anyway, I said. I didn't think they were speaking Spanish, but I thought instead I'd throw out some other language to impress them. They shrugged again and walked away. I stood there, trying to picture and figure out what I could do next. The only idea that came to me was that I might never leave the zoo, and I wasn't exactly thrilled about spending the night with a bunch of roaring lions close by. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned around, hoping it was Miss Flowers. It wasn't. It was a woman wearing a brown uniform with a wild about gingerbread t-shirt. "I like gingerbread too," I said to her, "but I have to say I'm not wild about it." "I don't understand," she said. "Why are we talking about gingerbread?" "Because that's what it says on your shirt. Wild about gingerbread." She looked down at her shirt, then back at me, and then burst out laughing. "It says wild about giraffes," she said, "not gingerbread." "At least I was close," I said. "They both start with a G. I'm not much of a reader." "I wasn't at your age either," she said, still smiling, "but it didn't stop me from doing something I love. I'm Nora Bix," she went on. "I work here at the zoo with the giraffes and the elephants. You seem to be lost." "I'm only half lost," I said. "The half that can't find the snack bar where my class is waiting." "Is it the one next to the gorillas?" "With the people with the frozen lemonades?" "That's exactly the one." "I can take you there. I just have to make a quick stop at the elephant enclosure and then check on Elsie." "Oh, is Elsie your mom?" "Actually, Elsie is my mom's name. That's why I named our newest elephant after her." I'm sure she's thrilled. "Elephant Elsie just arrived at the zoo yesterday. We're keeping her separate from the others until we know she's comfortable here in her new home. Come on, we'll say hi and I'll get you back to your class." As we followed the yellow line along the path, I couldn't believe that I was actually going to see a real live elephant up close. I couldn't stop smiling. If I had a t-shirt, I told Nora, mine would say, "Wild about elephants." I think they're very smart. "They are," she said. "That's one of the reasons why it makes me so angry when they're mistreated. Elsie was in a circus where she wasn't taken care of properly. We rescued her. By then, we had reached the elephant enclosure. In the distance, I could see 3 very big elephants standing around a pool of water, spraying their backs with their trunks. Next to them, in a separate fenced-off area, was another elephant that was rubbing her body against a tree trunk. "There's my Elsie," Nora said, looking like looks like she's got an itchy back. Maybe I could lend her my bamboo back scratcher that I bought in Chinatown, I offered. "It really works. Of course, her back is a lot bigger than mine." "You wait here," Nora said. "I'm going to run inside and refresh her water. Then I'll take you to the snack bar. It's just up the red trail. You can see it from here." "Oh, that's okay," I said to Nora. "I can get there from here. It's easy. I'll just follow the red line." "You sure?" "Totally sure." "Okay, Mr. Wild About Elephants," she said. "Nice talking to you." I watched Nora unlock the gate and walk into the enclosure. Elsie trumpeted when she came in. Nora talked softly to her as she picked up the hose and filled up Elsie's gigantic water bucket. Then Nora opened the gate and went into the enclosure where the other elephants were still spraying each other. I tried to leave. I really did. I even turned around and walked over to the red trail, but I couldn't do it. I was so close to a real live elephant, one that was probably lonely and scared in her new home. Poor Elsie. Maybe she needed a visitor, and maybe, just maybe, I was that visitor. Before I could stop myself, I went into the unlocked gate and pushed it open. In a few steps, I was face to face with the largest animal I have ever seen. Oh, Hank, some people never learn. The first 5 things I saw in the elephant enclosure. By Hank Zipzer. 1. Elephant poop the size of a house. 2. More elephant poop. 3. Whoops, here comes another one. 4. I better get out of the way or you won't be able to see me. 5. Sorry, there's no number 5, but when an elephant's gotta go, it's gotta go. Chapter 5. I just stood there, staring into Elsie's big brown eyes, which were about a mile above my head. She stared right back at me. Neither of us moved a muscle. When I have a stare down with my sister Emily, she bursts out laughing in about 2 seconds. So I always win. But Elsie didn't even bat an eye. I wasn't sure whether our stare down was a good thing or a bad thing. It just was definitely good that she wasn't charging at me with her giant tusks, but maybe she was thinking about doing it, which would definitely be bad. "Hi, Elsie," I whispered. "My name's Hank." Well, really it's Henry, but everyone calls me Hank, so you can too. Suddenly, her ears started to flap. In fact, they flapped so hard that I could feel the air brush across my face. I jumped back a few feet. I hoped this was her way of saying, "Nice to meet you too," but it was possible this was her way of saying, "This is my place, buddy. Now beat it." Suddenly, I heard footsteps crunching on the leaves of the enclosure. I was pretty sure it was Nora coming back from visiting the other elephants. I knew the right thing to do was to tell Nora I was there, but sometimes the right thing to do isn't always the most fun thing to do. Without thinking, I ducked into the cave that was part of Elsie's enclosure. I hid behind a rock and peeked out. Nora had stopped and was petting Elsie's trunk. "How you doing, girl?" she said softly. At the sound of Nora's voice, Elsie started flapping her ears again. "I know you're happy when your ears flap," Nora said. "I'm glad you're feeling better. That circus you were with didn't take good care of you, but we will." I was so curious about what happened to Elsie at the circus, but I was hiding, so I couldn't ask. "Do you want a treat?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out an entire ear of corn. Elsie lifted her trunk and gently took the corn from Nora. Then she popped the whole thing into her mouth. Even from where I was, I could hear her teeth grinding. I could tell Elsie loved that treat because her ears started flapping like crazy. I smiled thinking about when I have a black and white cookie, which is my favorite treat. My ears are too small to flap, but I sure hop around a lot. "There's more where that came from," Nora told Elsie. "You be a good girl now." I watched as Nora walked across the enclosure to the high metal fence. She opened the gate and, without looking back, locked it behind her. Wow, I thought. This is great. Now it's just me and Elsie. The next thought I had was, wow, this is not that great. I'm locked in here with 15,000 pounds of elephant. When Nora was out of sight, I crept out from behind the rock. I thought I was being quiet, but Elsie's big ears obviously worked very well. She whipped around, swishing her tail back and forth. When she saw me, she raised her giant trunk and let out a loud trumpeting sound. I stood completely still, as if I had turned into a clay statue. Elsie took a step toward me, then another step. My heart started to beat really fast, and when I say fast, I mean like a speeding race car. What was Elsie going to do to me? Push me? Sit on me? Crush me? Breathe, Hank. Don't panic. It's only the largest land mammal on Earth. You can think of something. Look around. Use your brain. My eyes darted around the enclosure, hoping to find an ear of corn that I could give Elsie. That would at least distract her for a minute. Then I spotted a dusty soccer ball. Maybe Elsie played soccer, I thought, and maybe she was in the mood for a game. You never know. "Elsie," I said, in my calmest voice, the one I use when I'm trying to explain to my dad why my report card is always so bad. "I'm going to walk over to that soccer ball, and you are going to stay right there, okay?" Elsie lifted her trunk and let out another loud trumpet. "I'm going to take that as a yes," I said, "and here I go." My brain told my feet to move. At first, they didn't, but then they did. Oop, that's okay. Never taking my eyes off Elsie, I started creeping toward the ball. "So, Elsie, want to hear a joke?" I asked. Jokes always make me feel happy. Here it is. What's the best time to go to the dentist? Give up? Tooth hurty. Ah. Elsie didn't move a muscle. I guess she didn't get the joke. That made sense. I mean, Elephants don't spend a lot of time in the dentist chair. Elsie watched carefully as I took the last few steps toward the ball. I'm going to pass the ball to you very gently, I explained, and then you pass the ball back to me. Very, very, very gently. We humans call that playing soccer. Keeping my eyes glued to her eyes, I kicked the ball in her direction. When it stopped at her feet, she tilted her big head and just stared at it. Hank, you dummy. Of course she's just staring at it. Elephants don't play soccer. Suddenly, Elsie lifted her big round foot and kicked the ball. I mean, kicked it right back to me. No! You didn't, I said, trapping the ball under my foot. That was a perfect pass. I used the side of my foot to pass the ball back to her. She looked down at the ball again, took aim, and sent it flying back to me. I couldn't believe it. I was playing soccer with an elephant. I couldn't wait to tell Frankie and Ashley. I might be the only kid in New York City who has ever done that. In fact, I might be the only kid on the planet who's ever played soccer with an elephant. Here you go, girl, I said. Here comes the Zipzer Speedball. I kicked a strong shot in her direction and watched it roll quickly across the dirt. Elsie pulled her foot back and instead of stopping the ball, let loose a speedball of her own. Her huge foot made a solid contact with the soccer ball. It took off like a rocket, with dust flying off it like smoke, and it was coming straight at my head. Chapter 6. The soccer ball was coming at me so fast I couldn't even look. It didn't even look like a ball. It looked like those pictures of meteors I've seen hurtling toward Earth, except at the moment, I was Earth. I had no time to think. Luckily, my reflexes took over and I dove to the dirt. When I lifted my head, I saw the ball crash into the fence behind me. It landed so hard, it actually made the chain link fence rattle. You got one hot foot there, Elsie, I told her. You should consider going pro. As I stood up and started to brush myself off, I heard someone calling my name. I've heard that same voice ever since I was 2 years old. Hank! Frankie called. Yo, Hank! Where are you? If you can hear us, give a sign, Ashley yelled. I'm in here, guys, I answered. Hank? Another voice called. This is Miss Shimazato. Where exactly are you? We're all worried. I'm in the elephant enclosure with Elsie. There was a long silence. Then Ms. Shimazato said, You mean you're inside there? As in actually inside? Frankie called out. As in next to an elephant, Ashley added. Her name is Elsie, I called out. Come around the corner to the gate and I'll introduce you. I looked over at Elsie, who was shifting her weight from foot to foot. You're going to meet my best friends, I explained to her, and Ms. Shimanzato too. Her son Ryan is in my class. Elsie didn't seem too interested. She reached out with her trunk and sucked up some dirt from the ground, then sprayed it all over her back. Don't be nervous, I said. You're going to like them as much as you like me. 2 seconds later, Frankie, Ashley, and Ms. Shimonzato appeared at the fence. When they saw me inside, standing next to Elsie, Ms. Shimonzato let out a shriek. "Hank, get out of there this second," she said. "What's the rush?" I said. "It's safe in here." "Hank," Ashley said, "in case you haven't noticed, there's a giant elephant standing right next to you." "Don't worry, Elsie and I are friends. Well, maybe not friends, but teammates. Ms. Flowers sent us to bring you back immediately," Ms. Shimonzato said. "You better listen this time, Zip," Frankie said. "You're in big trouble. When you didn't come back with McKelty, Miss Flowers got worried," Ashley went on. "She called the office and got a bunch of staff members to help look for you. I talked her into letting Frankie and me go on a search if we promised to stick with Ms. Shimonzato and came back right away. I can't get out of here," I told them. "The fence is too high and the gate's locked." "So you're stuck in there forever?" Ashley asked. "A zookeeper named Nora has the key," I explained. "She's wearing a t-shirt that says, 'Wild about giraffes.' If you find her, she'll help." "We're on it," Frankie said. "Hank, you stay right there," Ms. Shimonzato told me. "As if I could have any other choice," I muttered. "Come on, children," I heard Ms. Shimonzato say. "This is an emergency. We have to hurry." The 3 of them ran off down the path, and I turned around to see what Elsie was up to. She had wandered over to her cave, where several large bales of hay were stacked up against the wall. She lifted the top one with her trunk and carried it over to the middle of her enclosure. "You must be hungry," I said to her. "That's a lot of hay for lunch." "Talking about lunch, I'm hungry too. I wish I liked hay, but I'm more of a hot dog kind of guy myself." Elsie went over to the stack, lifted another huge bale of hay, and brought it back to the middle of the space. Then she picked it up as high as she could and slammed it against the first one. I think she was trying to break them up so she could start eating the hay. Boy, was she strong. "I bet your trunk can lift me," I said to Elsie. "I weigh a lot less than those bales." "Wait a minute, Hank," zipped her. I thought, "You may have a hard time in school, but sometimes that brain of yours comes up with a brilliant idea. And this is one of those times." "Elsie," I began, "I need your help." She stopped eating her hay and stared at me. "That's good," I said. "Now, watch me. I'm going to explain what I need you to do. You're going to pretend I'm a bale of hay and lift me up and over the fence with your trunk. Do you think you can do that?" Elsie just kept staring at me. This wasn't working. I took a deep breath and started again. "You," I said, pointing at her with both my pointer fingers. "Me," I said, pointing at myself. "Trunk," I said, reaching out and patting her trunk. "Up," I said, pointing to the sky. "Over," I said, pointing to the fence. Elsie was looking at me without moving. "Give me a sign if you understand anything I just said," I begged her. "Please, Elsie." Elsie shifted her weight as if she was getting ready to do something. I held my breath. Then a river of yellow water began pouring from her body, making a puddle on the ground that grew to a lake, that grew to an ocean. I can tell you that was not the sign I was waiting for. Chapter 7. Elsie looked down at the puddle, then raised her trunk and let out a happy trumpet. "I understand," I said to her. "If I were you, I'd feel much better too." Elsie turned back to her lunch, pulled a giant clump of hay off the bale, and shoved it into her mouth with her trunk. I knew that if I wanted to get her attention, it was going to have to try and involve hay. Here's a tip for you. You don't mess with an elephant when she's hungry. I walked over to Elsie's lunch spot and grabbed a fistful of hay. No, I wasn't going to eat it. Like I said, I'm more of a hot dog guy. I held the hay out for Elsie to sniff. The tip of her long trunk nuzzled my hand. It actually felt like fingers tickling my palm. You'd be amazed how gentle such a huge animal can be. She took the hay and curled her trunk toward her mouth, popping the whole handful in at once. I listened while she chewed. Then she burped. "Well, of course that's going to happen," I said. "You put too much in your mouth at one time. The same thing happens to me when I'm sharing a pickle with my grandfather, Papa Pete. I love pickles so much I shove the whole thing in my mouth at once. Then it's burp city." Elsie was more interested in the hay than in my story. I picked up another fistful, and she reached out for it with her trunk. This time, I took a few steps backward, and she followed me. I took a few more steps toward the fence surrounding her enclosure. She followed me again. I kept repeating this until we were almost touching the fence. "That's a good girl," I said. "To Elsie, now comes the hard part, but I know you can do it. My mom always says, if you can imagine it, you can make it happen. Of course, I don't know if that applies to elephants, but I'm going to be positive here and say that it does." I held the hay in front of me, and Elsie stretched her long trunk. Instead of giving her the hay, I took hold of her trunk with my hands. Then she did the most amazing thing. She curled up her trunk so that I was in the shape, so that it was in the shape of a hook, the perfect place for me to put my feet. I stepped onto her trunk, wrapping my arms around it, and held on tight. "Now, lift me up and put me down on the other side of the fence," I told her. "When I'm on the other side, you'll get your hay." As Elsie lifted me high into the air, it felt like I was an elevator with no walls. Trust me, you don't realize how tall an elephant is until you're riding on its trunk. I looked down at the ground. That was a bad idea. It was way down there. So, instead, I looked straight ahead of me and tried to pretend that what was happening wasn't happening. Holy macaroni, Zip, I heard Frankie's voice call. Oh my goodness, what is going on? Ms. Shimonzano shouted. Elsie and I are working on a plan. Whatever it is, it looks extremely dangerous, she shouted. It sure does, Ashley agreed. Hank, are you okay up there? A little dizzy. I'm glad I didn't finish my scrambled eggs at breakfast, though. Did you guys find Nora? We found someone who knew where she was and went to get her. We rushed back here to make sure you're okay, Ashley said. Zip, Frankie called. Can I just point out you're on an elephant trunk? I tried to sound calm, like riding an elephant's trunk was something I did every day. Elsie's just giving me a little lift. A little lift, Miss Shimonzato cried. You're scaring me, Hank. Believe me, you're not the only one, I answered. Get down here right now, Miss Shimonzato called. You heard him, Elsie, I said to her big ear. Down, girl. Put me down on the other side of the fence. Elsie stood very still for a minute. Then her big eyes turned to look me right in the eye. You can do it, I told her. One step forward and lower me down to my friends. Elsie took a baby step forward. Let me remind you that a baby step for her is a giant leap for us. Then she started to lower her trunk. Seventh floor, sixth floor, fifth floor. Soon I was close enough to the ground to slide down her trunk like a fire pole. As my feet touched the ground, I put my hands in the air and shouted, We did it! Thank you, Elsie. To my surprise, I heard what sounded like people clapping. I looked around and, for the first time, noticed that a group of people had gathered. They were all pointing at me. A few were even taking pictures. That's quite a show, kid, a man in a Yankees baseball cap called out. Do you do that every day at noon? A woman holding a baby shouted. I really didn't do anything but hold on, I said to everyone. Elsie did the hard part, didn't you, girl? Elsie raised her trunk up to the sky and trumpeted loudly. That's right, I said to her. You should be proud of yourself. Elsie trumpeted again. Oh, I get it, I said. You want your hay. Okay, here it is. I held the hay out in my hand, and Elsie's big trunk swooped down and picked it all up. Then the trunk and the hay disappeared over the fence. Hey everyone, I've got the key, Nora called, running down the path toward us. What's the big emergency? Hank was inside the enclosure with that elephant, Ms. Shimonzato told her. It was so frightening. Nora turned to me. She looked shocked. You snuck in there? She asked. I hope you know that's very dangerous. Not if you know Elsie like I do, I answered. She's my friend. Did you know that she's a great soccer player? She's an elephant. Elephants don't play soccer. Luckily, I didn't have to say a word. Elsie came to my rescue when a soccer ball came flying through the air. Usually, I'm not very good at catching a ball, but this one was kicked up and over the fence right to me. I reached out and grabbed it. The people who were gathered led a huge cheer. That's amazing, the man with the Yankees cap yelled. I want her on my team, a kid called out. Nora turned to the elephant enclosure. Elsie was standing at the gate, waiting for me to kick the ball back to her. I know it seemed weird, but I'd swear that elephant was smiling. Chapter 8. Nora couldn't believe her eyes. Did I just see what I think I saw? She asked. Frankie, Ashley, and I all nodded at the same time, as if we had planned it. You've seen her kick the ball like that before? Nora asked me. Sure, I said. Elsie and I have been playing a lot of soccer this morning. Nora gave me a funny look. I'd like to see this with my own eyes, Nora said, because since Elsie has been with us, she hasn't seemed at all playful. In fact, quite the opposite. Then just watch this, I said to her, and I put the soccer ball on the ground. Okay, girl, I called out to Elsie. Here it comes. Keep your eye on the ball. Elsie flapped her ears, which was a good sign because it meant she was excited. I took aim and kicked the ball hard while lifting my foot. The ball sailed over the fence and right to Elsie. As the ball rolled toward her, she put out her gigantic foot and, just like that, kicked it back to me. There was a gasp from the people in the crowd. Amazing, I heard Nora whisper. We passed the ball back and forth. When the ball was on my side of the fence, Elsie lifted her trunk and she trumpeted loudly, as if to say, she shoots, she scores! Nora actually started to laugh out loud. I didn't know what you said to the elephant, she said to me, but she sure is acting like a different animal. I think Elsie's ready to make new friends, I told Nora. We have to be careful putting Elsie in with the others, she said. Introducing a new elephant into a group can be risky. We have to be sure they all get along. But if you put Elsie in the other Elsie in with the other elephants, they could start their own soccer team. Maybe I'll help you think of a name. My soccer team is the Sharks, but that would be a weird name for an elephant soccer team. How about Miss Shimonzato put up her hand to stop me. I hate to block your creativity, Hank, she said, but I think you should leave the decisions about this elephant up to the zookeepers. I need to get you back to your class right away. I know Miss Flowers is very worried. I would call her to let her know you're okay, but I left my phone at the snack bar. I'll let you go, Nora said. Are you sure you know the way? Miss Shimonzato nodded and thanked Nora for her help. Then she led us up the path toward the snack bar. I hope Ms. Flowers hasn't called my parents, I said as we walked. I'll be grounded until I'm old enough to shave. I'm gonna hand it to you, Zip, Frankie said, with a laugh. No matter how much trouble you're in, you're always funny. We hurried up the red path, past the signs, and past the lions and zebras. Oh, look, I said, pointing to an especially beautiful zebra that was standing by the fence. Can we stop and try to count his stripes? This is no time for stripe counting, Ms. Shimonsato said. Okay, but I still think it was a good suggestion, I answered. I don't think you understand how much trouble you're in, Hank, Ashley whispered. Did you know that 2 sets of zebra stripes are exact? Did you know that no 2 sets of zebra stripes are exactly alike? I went on. Very interesting, Zip, Frankie said. Enough talking, kids, Miss Shimonsato said. We've got to hurry. Up ahead, at the end of the red trail, I saw the snack bar. Our whole class was sitting at the table, looking bored. Miss Flowers was on her phone, pacing back and forth. Nick McKelty was the first one to notice us approaching. Well, it's about time, Zipperteeth, he yelled. Our entire trip has been ruined because of you. Miss Flowers looked up from her phone and immediately ran toward us. Oh, thank goodness, she called out. I've been so worried, Hank. Are you okay? He's fine, Miss Shimonsato said. He was having an unusual encounter with an elephant. Wait until I tell you about it, I said. No, Hank, now is not the time, Miss Flowers sounded really angry. I'm too upset. What was the first rule we discussed about field trips? Don't feed the animals, I guess. You see, this is an example of how you don't say or pay attention, Miss Flowers scolded. The most important rule we discussed was no wandering away. We specifically went over how everyone stays together, unless you are with your walking buddy. I looked over at Nick, who was enjoying watching me get in all this trouble. My partner, whose name I won't say out loud, but begins with an N and ends with an LT, ran off and left me in the bathroom. I did not, McKelty yelled. You were just too stupid to find me. That's enough, Nick, Miss Flowers answered. We don't call people names. I will handle this. Then, turning to me, she said, Hank, why didn't you return immediately? That was my plan, I said truthfully. But when I came out of the bathroom, I was lost. And then I saw Elsie and she seemed lonely, so I decided to stay with her a while. Yeah, McKelty shouted. And because of that, you're the only one who got to see the elephants. The rest of us had to sit here staring at our frozen lemonade cups. I thought about what he said for a minute, and then, as much as I didn't want to admit it, Nick McKelty was right. I'm sorry, I said to everyone. I didn't mean to ruin the class trip. I guess I just wasn't thinking. Nothing new about that, McKelty grumbled. Frankie put his hand on my elbow. We know you didn't mean to mess up the trip, Hank, he whispered. Hank, I hope you understand that there will be consequences for what you did, Miss Flowers said. Here's one thing I learned about adults. When they say there will be consequences, what they really mean is that you're going to get punished. I looked at Miss Flowers, who was standing there with her arms folded in front of her. I gave her a little smile, but she did not smile back. I knew what that meant. Trouble with a capital T. Chapter 9. 5 possible consequences that might happen by Hank Zipser. 1. I will have to shovel up poop from the monkey habitat without help or a nose clip. 2. I will have to sit next to Nick McKelty's armpit on all the class trips. Boy, I'm really going to need that nose clip. 3. I will get the longest time out in the history of the world. It will last so long that it will actually go into the Guinness Book of World Records. Number 4. I will have to write a 3-paragraph report on my experience at the zoo. 3 whole paragraphs. I'd rather shovel monkey poop. Number 5. I already forgot number 5. So, sorry, but that's life in the Zipser brain. Chapter 10. The good news was, I did not have to shovel up monkey poop. The bad news was, I actually got all of the other punishments, plus some I had never even thought of. First of all, I had to sit next to Nick McKelty on the bus ride back to school. His armpit was especially stinky after spending the day at the zoo. My poor nose got so tired from trying to block the smell that I was going to have to put it to bed early. Second, when Ms. Flowers told my parents what I had done, I got grounded. My dad said for the next 2 weeks I could eat, breathe, and go to school, and that would be about it. Third, all of my screen time was taken away for 2 weeks. That meant no computer, no video game, and I couldn't even use my mom's phone to play a math game she had downloaded for me. When I tried to tell my dad that math was good for me, he said, use a pencil and paper instead. Then he put a whole sheet of subtraction problems in front of me. Was he kidding? I couldn't even do them behind me. The hardest part of the punishment, though, was writing the 3-paragraph report on my experience at the zoo. For me, writing even one sentence is hard. Writing a paragraph is very, very hard. Writing 3 paragraphs is as close to impossible as a person can get. After dinner that night, my dad sent me up at the desk in my room. He gave me strict instructions. Don't come out of your room until you've written the 3 paragraphs, he said. But Dad, I answered, this isn't fair. My brain is already cream cheese from working on those subtraction problems. Besides, I'm not a good paragraph writer. You should have thought of that before you wandered away, Hank. Now, get to work. I want you in bed with the lights out at 8:30. And remember, don't get up from your desk until you finish the paragraph. As soon as my dad left the room, the first thing I did was get up from my desk. I had to. My left leg was bouncing up and down like it had a motor in it. Or maybe it was my right leg. I have a hard time knowing my lefts and my rights. But no matter what leg it was, I had to take it for a walk around my room. I meant to go right back to my desk, but I made a little stop at my dresser and opened the drawer. The next thing I knew, I was looking through my collection of baseball cards. I don't know how they got out of order, but the sheets were all mixed together. The Yankees, I knew those cards wouldn't be happy until I separated them because the two teams could not get along at all. I took the cards out of my drawer and put them down on the carpet. I was busy sorting them out into two piles when the door opened and my mom stuck her head in. "That doesn't look like writing," she said, coming into the room and closing the door behind her. "You always say I have to get organized," I answered. "Well, look, I'm organizing. This is not going to help you get your report done," she pointed out. "You should be organizing your thoughts, not your baseball cards." That was easy for her to say. When I tell my brain to organize my thoughts, it doesn't listen. It just thinks about whatever it wants to think about. And at that moment, it was thinking about baseball cards. "Hank," my mom said, "this assignment shouldn't be hard for you. You know a lot about elephants. You watch so many shows about them on television. Just combine what you already know with what you remember about your field trip today. You'll be done in no time." My mom helped me clean up the baseball cards and put them back in the drawer. "The Yankees and the Mets are going to have to learn to get along on their own," I told her. She laughed, but then put her hand on my shoulder, like she does when she gets tired and serious. "Get to work, honey. Once your report is done, you'll feel better." She left, and I sat down at my desk, and for real this time, I was determined to write my 3 paragraphs. I picked up one of the pencils and got my name at the top of the paper. Wow, that was a good start. Then I thought of a title. "How to Hug an Elephant." I really liked that. I only had one problem. I couldn't spell elephant. Actually, I had 2 problems because I pushed so hard on the pencil, I snapped the point off it. It took me 20 minutes to find my pencil sharpener, which I finally found hiding under my rubber band collection. Once I was all set up with my sharpened pencil, the really hard part started. The thoughts were all there in my mind, waiting to come out. I just couldn't push them through my pencil. I'd write one word and then erase it. I erased over the spot so much, I erased a hole right through the paper. I thought it might help if I said the first 2 sentences out loud. "Elsie is an elephant that just moved to the zoo." I said to my empty room. She weighs 15,000 pounds. My ears love those sentences. Why couldn't I just get the words onto the paper in front of me? I held the pencil and tried to write the first word. It didn't look right to me, probably because I spelled Elsie as L-Z-Y. Then my mind took off on its own and I couldn't follow one thought. The facts of the television show got all mixed up with my visit to the zoo. Nothing made sense. My thoughts were just out of order, just like my baseball cards. I didn't know how long I sat there trying to write the first sentence. It felt like 20 years, but I'm sure it was less. I was glad when my dad came in and told me it was 8:30. I've never wanted to go to bed so much in my life. Did you do a good job? My dad asked as I put the page with only title and my name on it into my backpack. Dad, I did the best job I could. It wasn't really a lie. I had tried, and tried, and tried. I hope you learned your lesson, was all he said. Now, go to bed. I put on my pajamas and walked down the hall to the bathroom. As I brushed my teeth, I stared at myself in the mirror. I tried to imagine how I was going to explain to Ms. Flowers all I had for her was an empty page with a hole in it, but the only thing I saw was a worried kid with a mouthful of toothpaste and not even one paragraph to turn in. Chapter 11. It took me a long time to walk to school the next morning. It was the same distance as always, a half block to the corner and another half block to PS 87. But I was walking as slowly as I could because I knew what was waiting for me when I got there. You're walking as slow as a snail this morning, Frankie noted. Actually, my sister Emily chimed in, snails don't walk. Walking means you have legs. Snails glide over surfaces. Fine, Frankie said. Then Hank is gliding very slowly on the sidewalk surface. Frankie's mom was taking us to school. Frankie's mom, who was taking us to school, agreed. Usually you're bouncing all around, Hank, she said. Like yesterday, when you were apparently didn't stay with your class during the field trip. You know about that too? I asked. Sure, she said. We discussed your elephant adventure over our meatloaf and mashed potatoes last evening. My family discussed it over chocolate pudding, Ashley said. Was the whole world talking about my mistake? I guess they were. And the worst part was, so was Principal Love. I found that out the minute I entered the school. He was standing on the front step. Weird Velcro sneakers greeting all the students. As soon as he saw me, he came marching over. I could hear his sneakers squeaking on the pavement. I didn't like the sound of that. Well, young man, that was quite the scare you gave everyone yesterday. I noticed that the mole on his cheek, which looks like the Statue of Liberty, seemed to be shaking its head at me. Was his mole angry too? Ms. Flowers said that part of your punishment was to write a report on your trip to the zoo, he went on. I'll be there for your presentation this morning. You mean you're coming to my class? Yes, indeed. You actually sitting down to listen to my presentation? Yes, indeed, again. Wow, I said, that's gonna be so, it's gonna be so, I just can't think of the word right now. There are many words to describe my visit, Principal Love said. Thrilling, stimulating, enlightening. I didn't tell him, but actually, the word I had in mind was scary. Really scary. Chapter 12. I kept hoping that Miss Flowers had forgotten about my 3-paragraph report. She didn't mention it after she took attendance. She didn't mention it when she wrote her quote of the day on the board. She didn't mention it when she announced that it was taco day in the cafeteria. I was starting to feel pretty good and even thinking how much I'd like a taco for lunch. But then Principal Love walked in and I lost my appetite immediately. Principal Love has joined us for Hank's presentation, Miss Flowers said to the class. Hank, are you ready? My mind screamed no. My mouth said yes. Fine, she said. Please come up to the front of the class and read us your report. I opened my notebook and took out the piece of paper I had worked on. Nick McKelty leaned across the desk as far as he could without flipping over. Even though I tried to hide the paper, he got a quick look at it. Hey, there's nothing written on there, he shouted. It's totally empty. It is not, I said. See, there's a title. How to Hug an Elephant. Oh, is that what it says? McKelty snorted. To me, it looks like somebody threw up on your paper. Nick, that's enough, Miss Flowers said. Hank, can I please see your report? My heart started to beat faster. It's not what it looks like, I said as I got close to her desk. I know it looks empty, but there's a lot of thought behind it. Miss Flowers held out her hand, and I had no choice but to give her the paper. Hank, she said, looking at both sides, there's nothing but a big hole in the middle of this paper. I know. That's where all the thoughts fell through. They went right down the hole and into the carpet in my bedroom. But luckily, for all of us, I still have them here in my mind. Before she could answer, I turned to the class and started to talk. Yesterday, I had the most amazing experience with Elsie the elephant. I began. I learned that Elsie can use the end of her trunk like fingers. That's how she picks up things to eat. I also learned that if an elephant raises her trunk up in the air while she's trumpeting, it means she's happy to see you. But the most important thing I learned from Elsie the elephant was elephants have feelings as big as their bodies. How'd you learn that? McKelty shouted out. Did you two dance or something? Actually, Elsie and I played soccer, and it turns out she's a natural. She could score a goal from a mile away. I don't believe you, he said. Well, it's true. You can ask Frankie and Ashley. They saw her do it. We sure did, Frankie said. That Elsie has got a great goal kick, Ashley added. Elephants are the largest land animals in the world, I continued. When one of their friends in the herd dies, they feel bad. When Elsie arrived at the zoo, she felt very sad because after my visit with her, I believe she showed the zookeeper another side of herself, a happy side. Sounds like you helped her feel better, Hank, Katie Sperling said. I think that's so cool. A bunch of the other kids nodded. Yeah, I think I did. So, I'm really sorry that I scared everyone by getting lost, and that I did something dangerous beyond going to the enclosure. I'm also sorry I messed up your visit to the zoo, but I hope you understand that something wonderful happened with Elsie. I have a question, Principal Love said from the back of the room. Okay, Principal Love, I called on. I call on you. Your behavior prevented your classmates from enjoying the field trip as much as you did, he said. How do you plan to make that up to them? That was a good question. I had been thinking about it a lot. First, let me repeat to everyone how sorry I am. And second, I have decided to donate everything in my piggy bank to a Save the Elephants organization. Elephants like Elsie are in danger, and I want to help them. Why, Hank, what a wonderful idea, Miss Flowers said. I counted my money last night, and I'm pretty sure I have $27.13. It might be 15 cents. I just couldn't keep track. Anyway, I'm donating the money in the name of all of you and Mrs. Flowers, second grade class. To my surprise, everyone started to cheer. I think you should give the money to us, Nick McKelty blurted out. Everyone started to boo. That felt amazing. Even though I had ruined their field trip, they were sticking up for me. Well, actually, not for me, but for Elsie and all the other elephants in the world. I'm glad to see that you've learned your lesson, Principal Love said, and on top of that, you've taught us all an important one. I'm sure that Elsie and her elephant friends will benefit from your kindness. Well done, young man. My ears couldn't believe that Principal Love talked about me like that. I stood there in front of my class. And you know what? I felt proud. My trip to the zoo turned out to be the greatest field trip ever. Chapter 13, 6 Incredible Facts About Elephants by Hank Zipzer. 1. Elephants can live to be over 70 years old. Wow, that's even older than Papa Pete. 2. An elephant's skin is an inch thick. So is my sister's head. Number 3. Elephants purr like cats. It must be really, hard when they try to curl up in your lap, though. Number 4, an elephant's tooth can weigh 5 pounds and is as big as a brick. I wonder where they sell toothbrushes that size. Number 5, elephants sometimes hug by wrapping their trunks together. Just the thought of that makes me happy. Number 6, elephants are in danger from people who want to kill them for their ivory tusks. If you want to help them as much as I do, you can learn all about elephants at websites for groups like the World Wildlife Organization, www.wildlife.org, or United for Wildlife. UnitedForWildlife.org. The end. And that appears to be a wrap for that. I don't know how long that took us, but it got a little hard to read partway through, but we made it. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed it, and perhaps hugging an elephant is not the greatest idea. Anyway, we'll see you all next time when we find out where Hank is next. I think there's 3 books left before I have to replenish the stock. We might wind up with more Hank, we might wind up with, who knows what we might wind up with, depending on how this COVID thing carries on. We'll see what books I can get my mitts on. But there's more Here's Hank, where that came from. So hopefully everyone's a fan of Hank, because he's here. Well, he's somewhere. And until next time, we'll see you.
Voiceover on. YouTube. Back. Stop recording. Button.